All right, this is the Unit 2 review for supply, demand, and business organizations. The first part of your study guide covers demand. So if you look at number 1, it says, which of the following will not be a determinant of demand? This was on the quiz, and the answer is D. A, B, and C are all determinants of demand, but the prices of inputs used to produce the good, that is a determinant of supply. Then number 2, when looking at a demand curve, a shift to the left means a decrease in demand, while a shift to the right means an increase in demand. We covered that pretty extensively in class. Number 3, Coke and Pepsi are substitutes. Remember that a substitute is something that can be used in place of each other. A complement is something that goes together. Income effect is changing of demand by raising or lowering income. Now, if you look at the chart above number 4, you see that in A, demand is going to the right, which means an increase in demand. And B, demand is going to the left, which means a decrease in demand. And C, supply is going to the right, which is an increase in supply. And in D, supply is going to the left, which is a decrease in supply. So number 4 asks you, which of the above diagrams illustrate the effect of a decrease in incomes upon the market for secondhand clothing? So if incomes decrease, one of two things are going to happen in relation to secondhand clothing. Number 1, people aren't going to buy as many name brand or, department store clothes, so they'll be holding on to their clothes longer, which would be an effect to supply. So supply for secondhand clothing would decrease. But people also, because they have less money, they don't want to shop as much either. So that means that demand would increase. So looking at the charts above, the answers that would apply to this situation are A and D. But if you look at your answer choices, A and D are an option, which is A. So only. The best answer. That is the best answer from the answer choices that you're giving. Looking at number 5, it says, which of the following would not shift the demand curve for a good or service? The relationship. Remember that a shifting negative is one entire demand curve. But looking at this curve up and move it either right. Suppose that a decrease in the price of good X anything other than a price being sold. So with that lets you know that the change in price of a good or service does not affect demand. You know that it affects quantity in place of each other. And you really need to remember that on the test, because there are a lot of questions that relate between quantity, demand, and demand. Let's look at it in terms of actual things. Quantity demanded is the number that people want more butter on that demand curve that you're originally given. And then they would want less up margin, which is a but remember, demand is the entire butter. So wanting desirability of a product. So it goes left or right. So it increases or decreases. Less margarine being sold. If they were complements, if butter went down, then the price of margarine, the demand for margarine go up. But they're not complements, they're substitutes. Number 8, the amount of a good or service that a customer is willing to buy. That's demand. That's basic. We should know that. 9, other things equal. When the price of a good rises, the quantity demand of that good will fall. That is the law of demand. Y'all should know that. Number 10 is just like that question on y'all's quiz. The movement from point A to B on the graph. And you see that quantity 1 is further back or behind quantity 2 on the number line down there at quantity. So that lets you know that it's an increase in quantity demanded. Also, because it's still on the same demand line, you know that it's either dealing with quantity demanded. It doesn't have to do with demand. Number 11, all of the following shift the demand curve for automobiles to the right, except that is a brand new automobile dealership opens in town. That deals with supply and not demand. Number 12, if the cost of making bicycles falls, the price goes down. causing the demand curve to shift to the right. And it's asking you, is that true or false? So if the cost of making bicycles goes down, that means that the price goes down. And remember, anything dealing with price is a quantity demanded and not a demand issue. Alright, let's look at these last two demand questions before we move on to supply. Number 13, if the price of a substitute to good X increases, and you have four answer choices. So if it's a substitute, remember that means we can use it in place of it. So then the demand for good X should increase. If the price of a substitute goes up, then the demand for that one should increase. The higher price for batteries would tend to, it would increase the demand for electricity because electricity and batteries are substitutes. Alright, let's switch gears and look at supply really fast. Number 15, suppose there was an increase in input prices. What would you expect? If there's an input in input prices, that means that it costs more to make the item. So suppliers will probably put out less at lower price points because they can't make a profit. Then it asks you, what is variable costs? Variable costs are costs that change depending upon the number of output that's being made. What is the subsidy? Remember, a subsidy is where the government pays people not to produce. So money paid to producers not to produce a good or service. Number 18, a tax based on the production of a sale or good is called an excise tax. Remember, we talked about alcohol and cigarettes in class and how the government doesn't want you to do those things. So they place a tax on them to discourage you not to buy them. And then number 19, other things equal, when the price of the good rises, the quantity supply of that good also rises. That is the law of supply. Alright, we don't have that much more left, but let's look at combining supply and demand. You will need to know how to graph a combination of supply and demand and find the equilibrium price and if it's a shortage or if it's a surplus. Let's look at your study guide. Number 20, if at the current price there's a shortage of a good, a shortage means that there is more demand than there is supply. So if there is more demand than there is supply, that means that the price is too low. So the best answer would be that the price is below the equilibrium point. Remember that equilibrium point is where price and demand meet, and that's where we want, supply and demand meet, and that's where we want to be because there's no surplus and there's no shortage. Number 21, look at the graph above that. A binding price ceiling is shown in letter A, because the price ceiling is above. You see that the equilibrium point is below that. So the best answer would be A. The best answer actually would be B because it's binding. So that means that it restricts the supply. There won't be a question like that on your test. How does the price ceiling affect supply and demand? You can read that. If the price ceiling is below equilibrium point, then that creates a problem for the producers, and so there will be a shortage because there will be more people that want the good than people who are willing to produce the good. So that is not good for the market. What language do consumers and producers use to communicate? That answer is prices. They communicate in prices. Alright, number 24, according to the graph, you got to look at that graph right there. You see that you got a supply line and a demand line, and it's trying to ask you where is equilibrium point. Equilibrium point is where they meet. So where do they dissect up there on that graph? And the answer is at $5 in price and $40 in quantity. 25, according to the graph, that's very, very straightforward. I don't feel like I have to go over that. Alright, the last section is business organizations. Look over those business organizations. The answers are on Schoology for the study guide. Please know the difference between a partnership, a general partnership, a limited partnership, and a limited liability partnership. Know what a corporation is. Know what a franchise is. Know that a sole proprietor is the number one, is the most frequently used type of business organization. And then just know the characteristics of sole proprietorships, partnerships, general, limited liability, and LLPs and corporations, and you should be okay on the test. Please, 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 please study. Remember that this marks the halfway point in the course. There are only 2 units left. This is a 9-week course. So we need to be doing as best we can on this test. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. The best way to get me is to send me a message on Schoology, and I will try my best to get back with y'all.